How's it going, everyone? Today we're going to be doing a video on artillery. It's going to be a basic beginner's guide for artillery. It's not going to be looking at advanced mechanic. It's just going to be some basic stuff to help you guys get going and be more proficient when using artillery. So we're going to talk about three main things here. The first thing, we're just going to discuss types of artillery. From there, we're going to go ahead and discuss categories of use for artillery. Just putting artillery into three categories to help us be more specific with our intent when it comes to using artillery. And then we're just going to discuss how to use them effectively. And at the end of the video, I'll put some footage of using artillery and giving a brief overview of what I'm thinking about and how I utilize the concepts explained within this video. And if you guys are looking for a more in-depth approach to guides and tutorials and just general information when it comes to Broken Arrow, then I would highly recommend checking out Shark's and Karofsky's YouTube channels. I'll put them in the link below. And also check out baarmy.net if you guys are looking for a lot more guides and information that can be really valuable to your bow and arrow experience. So the way that I like to set up the types of artillery, I have three categories: just the short range artillery, medium range, and then long range artillery. And this will sort of feed into the next point as well. So for short range, we have the Vena for the Russian. For the US, we have the LAV-M. And these are by no means specific. These are just examples of short range artillery. So I'm going to interject here. I was editing the video, and I forgot to mention that the way that I look at short range artillery is anything that is up to about 2,000 meters. Then for medium, anything that is 2,000 to 4,000 meters. And then for long range, anything that is past 4,000. Then if you actually want to check a unit's effective range for their artillery, just go on over to the unit card, and then you're going to click on the main gun, and then select the munitions type, whichever one, and then it will show you the effective range for that artillery. And so for the medium range artillery, I like to have Russians, it's a Magnolia, and for the US, it is the Paladin. These are some examples of medium range artillery, usually going up anywhere from 3,800 meters. This one's about, I think, 2,400, a little less than what we have for the Paladin here, but this one's still just as effective. So for our long range artillery, I usually like to have this one between anywhere of 4,000 meters or above, usually 5,000, but 4,000 if you're not able to hit that mark. And so for the Russians, I like to have the Smerch on here. So this one's about 5,000 up to 5,000 meters. And then for the US, I like to have the Iron Thunder. This one has a maximum range of 5,000 meters as well. So that's going to be set up sort of your basic categories of types of artilleries, your short range, your medium, and your long range. And then this is going to influence the categories that we're going to use them in. So for our categories of use, there are three ways that I like to categorize my artillery. So for the first one, it's going to be counter arty, using longer range artillery to basically, whenever there's any artillery that's firing at us and we identify them, using our long range artillery to counter that arty and hopefully try to either displace them or destroy them. And then for our second category is anti-armor artillery, which looks like the Paladin or the Magnolia. And then for our other one, it's our last point, is for infantry support or just general support, which we'd be using our Vena for the Russians or our LAV-M for the Americans. And this is sort of, so it's going to allow you to be more intentional with your artillery. So you're not just taking random things, but you're being intentional with them. You're being able to say, you know what, I'm going to use this artillery piece to counter this. I'm going to use this artillery piece to provide support for my front line, whether it be engaging enemy vehicles or destroying enemy infantry that's entrenched into place, or just using it for providing a retreat or smoke cover. What unit am I going to bring when it comes to having counter artillery? And so for counter artillery, like I said, I like using the Smerch. You're going to want to choose one that has an effective range that's really long. So this one has 5,000 meters, which is pretty good for going against any enemy artillery, because most artillery is going to have a range, especially if you're doing long range artillery, of anywhere between 4,000 or more meters. So this would be perfect for countering enemy artillery. And the Paladin as well, if I could, or the Iron Thunder, I mean, would be good on the US alternative. And then when it comes to anti-armor, for the Russians, I like using the Magnolia. I find this one to be very effective, especially with its low aim time. And then for the US, I'm a little less effective with this one because the aim time is a lot longer than the Magnolia, but it's still pretty good when it comes to going against enemy vehicles, especially if we equip it with the cluster round. But I personally find the Magnolia to be much more effective, especially since it's able to come with 60 cluster rounds, and then the aim time is just much more efficient as well. And then when it comes to infantry support, when it comes to the Russians, the example that I've used here is the Vena. I really love using this one. You can either take it in its high explosive rounds or in its extended range. I leave it at its stock base, and it's really good for going against enemy infantry and providing smoke support for our units. And then for the Americans, I either take the LAV-M, if I can find it, or I take the MCV. These are both going to be beneficial for supporting your lines. really gonna be able to provide that infantry support, or just displacing enemies that are entrenched in a building, and providing support when they're doing a retreat. When you're doing a retreat, especially with the smokes, smoke is gonna be really beneficial, as we see later in this video. So that's going to be our categories of use. Sort of, it's supposed to simplify artillery and make it a little bit easier for you guys to decide which units you want to bring into the field. So that way you're able to say, okay, do I have artillery that's going to provide infantry support? Do I have artillery that's going to be able to go against armor? Do I have artillery that's going to be able to allow me to counter their artillery when I'm trying to make a push, and just be a little bit less risky when I'm doing that. Also, as a side note, make sure when you're choosing artillery for anti-armor that you're bringing in cluster rounds, because that's going to be doing the most damage to vehicles. You don't want to be bringing in HE to go against vehicles. You want to make sure that it's cluster. So those are the categories. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about how to use artillery effectively. So we have 3 main points that we're going to want to focus on. So the first point is just firing and moving. The second point is firing mode and the barrages and the way the kind of rounds that they're firing. And for the last one is utilizing smoke. So these are the 3 main points that we're going to want to focus on when we're figuring out how to be effective with artillery. So as you can see here, I have this paladin firing on the enemy position, and after it's been firing for about a decent amount of seconds, a decent amount of time, I'm going to want to change the position. So that's one of the biggest keys for using artillery, is that you want to be firing and moving. So after your initial barrage, you want to make sure that you're getting a safe distance away from wherever you were initially shooting from, so that way you don't get counter artilleried, because a decent player is going to identify wherever you're shooting from, and they're going to put a salvo on that position, because this will allow them to waste munitions and allow you to safely have a unit that continuously is putting pressure on them. And here that unit is the paladin. And then for our next point is that whenever you are resupplying your artillery units, say this paladin, you do not want to resupply wherever you're firing from. So if we're firing from this position over here, we do not want to resupply over here. And then you also never want to fire from wherever you're resupplying. So if we come over here and resupply at this position, we do not want to end up firing at this position. This is a sort of safe spot for our units to come and resupply. And I also like to, whenever I'm done resupplying my units, I like to pick up my supplies and move it to a different spot. So that way I'm able to safely just have a safe position, never allow them to get a lock on where I'm at. Just always keep moving, never give them time to identify your position and get an attack on that. So you just want to be safe when you're using artillery and resupplying your units. This way, you're just putting them at a lesser risk than just keeping them at one spot. And if a player is decent enough, they're going to identify that spot, and they'll probably use something like a GMLRS or just a regular MLRS and fire a long salvo on your position. So that's our main point for how to use them effectively. It's just making sure that you're continuously firing and moving. And also after your initial barrage, you want to make sure that you're switching positions. So now how exactly do we use our artillery? This is going to be our second point. So once you select an artillery, you might be wondering, how are we going to choose our different munition type? How do we choose how long we fire for? And how do we choose the way that we fire? So this is going to be we're going to be talking about the ammo. So you're going to click on T. It will show the ammo, the duration, and the mode. So this is how you're going to choose the different types of way that you could fire with an artillery piece. So for this one, let's go ahead and focus on the modes first. So for the first mode that we have is a point. This is your basic one that's always going to be sort of a default, just the basic circle. For our line target, you're just going to hold left click and drag. This will have it fire in that line forever, however long we have it for, until it sort of comes out of its distance range. And then for the last one, we have a creeping barrage. And that line on the left there, wherever that line is, it will shoot. It will start from there and work its way up. So that's how you choose the firing mode. Now for munitions, it's going to be on the top. You have from explosive to smoke to smart munitions. Smart munitions is basically just laser guided, and it will, if you have a unit that's laser guided on the enemy unit, and you shoot, the laser will designate it, and the missile will follow. And then we have our smoke munitions, basic smoke, and then you have explosives. So now for the duration, we have short, medium, and long. So it's pretty simple. I don't really need to explain this much. If you just want them to do a quick salvo, then you choose your short. If you want them to do a medium one, choose your medium. And if you want them to do a pretty long salvo, then just choose your long one. And usually if you're using something like a GMLRS or a regular MLRS, if you choose the short salvo, it would only be about 3 shots. And if you choose the medium, it will be half the munition. And if you choose the long salvo, it will just completely empty its the amount that it's in there. So if it has 12, it'll empty all 12. If it only has 9, it'll empty all 9. So that's the way that you're going to go ahead and change the firing mode, the barrages, and the munitions type for your artillery. And for the next point for how to use them effectively, artillery, is that you want to make sure that you're utilizing smoke. Now, a lot of people really don't use smoke, especially at the lower elos. Even in the medium, the medium elos or whatever, they don't tend to use smoke as much as they could have. And smoke is really beneficial. It's really good for getting you out of sticky situations, and really good for also getting really good pushes, and just it's one of the best things that you could do when you have a front line, and also just getting a good retreat going. So for our utilizing smoke, there's a bunch of things I want to list that you're going to want to make sure that you're utilizing smoke for. So you're going to want to make sure that you're utilizing smoke for retreats. You're going to want to make sure that you're utilizing it for advances. You're going to make sure that you're utilizing it for to cap point. You're also going to want to utilize it to stall. And also, you could use smoke on enemy positions, so that way you could stop them from firing at your unit you're trying to retreat. So the way, and I'll use footage from a game showing how I'm utilizing smoke and how I'm using it the most effective it can be to get an edge on the enemy team. It will really help decide who wins the game if you're able to use smoke strategically. If I have a specific unit that's being attacked and I can't get them out quick enough, I'll smoke their spot, or I'll use this unit's smoke on themselves, and then I'll also use this artillery piece here for more smoke just to help them out. And then if I have that, I'll also use a different one for a creeping barrage to sort of get a nice line of retreat going there, and I'll just use, say, reverse on the unit and just have them retreat. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about how to use, because we have our three categories, right? We have our category of counter artillery, we have our anti-armor, and we have our overall infantry support. So now let's go ahead and use, how are we going to use artillery for going against vehicles? So for this one, you could use the GMLRS, or even the Iron Thunder or the Paladin. Here we're going to want to utilize the one that has the cluster rounds, which both the Paladin and the GMLRS carry. So you're going to want to choose explosive, choose a point target, and this is the way that I like doing it. I like to anticipate where they might be and then get a creeping barrage going there. So we see that they're advancing forward. We might go ahead and follow the road here and get a creeping barrage going there. That way it's sort of anticipating where they might be and shooting at that spot. Or even just using the point mode to go ahead and fire on there. And that's how you're going to want to use artillery to counter enemy vehicles. If they're pushing on you, try to use the Paladin or whatever artillery that is equipped with cluster bombs. You're going to want to make sure that you're anticipating wherever they might be if they're getting an advance on you and shooting at the area. It's also good to use as a sort of deterrent, because then it'll sort of prevent the enemy and it'll stall them from getting that advance on you and allow you to reinforce in that amount of time that you are giving yourself. Ideally, you're going to want to be hitting units that are static. So if the enemy has forgotten about a few tanks that are in a position and you notice that they haven't moved in a while, then definitely target those enemy units, because it's going to be easier for you to get the kill on them than a moving target. They're going to be most likely aware of their units, but if they're not, then definitely take advantage of it. And then I'll use footage as well from one of my previous games, and I'll show me using the Magnolia and how I use that to be effective when it comes to anti-armor artillery. Now, if you're using artillery piece to go against infantry, I like to use the M12s right here, the MCVs. These are going to be really good going against enemy infantry. I like to use depending on the situation and the circumstance that you're in. So for this one, it might not be the best to use the point one. I mean, it could be if they're getting all bunched up together like this one. So we see that they're probably going to this building over here. So we're going to use this knowledge, and we're going to go ahead and get a barrage going on that position there. And that's how you're going to mainly use it against infantry. And then if you have them pushing, you could also use it on wherever you might think they're going to be pushing from. And if you're retreating your units, like we want these units to come back, what we're going to do here is we're going to select different munitions type. We're going to go to smoke. We're going to get a creeping barrage, and we're going to go this way. And then likewise with this one, we could use, since we have two of them, just use a point target, smoke, and just do it right in the middle. This way will allow our units to have some smoke and additional cover for their retreat. And if there's any units that are pushing into this tree line, it'll block their line of sight of our units. So we're utilizing the smoke here to save our units for a low risk retreat. That way we could send these units back here to resupply and then reinforce the front line. So that's the main way that you're going to want to use sort of the shorter artillery range units for infantry support. Also, you could use them in other ways too, for providing cover for your vehicles, just any advances or retreats that you want to do with any particular unit that you have. These guys are going to be really good at utilizing the smoke because they have about 48 rounds of this, so it's going to be really effective for getting a good offensive and also a good retreat going if you need to have it. And so when it comes to countering Arty, if we assume, or let's just take for example that this unit right here, let's say that they have some artillery piece right here and they started to shoot. I like to use units that are categorized as counter artillery. I like to save them until I know that the enemy is in a particular spot with their main artillery pieces, and I'll select a firing mode on that position. So like I don't fire this one until I know there's enemy artillery being fired, and then I will get this one and I will set a firing mission on whatever the enemy artillery is. That way I'm saving its rounds and I'm keeping it sort of in a secret safe spot, so that way whenever the enemy begins to fire with their artillery, I can go ahead and counter it with my artillery here. And then you could also hold fire. So it's a cool tip. If you hold fire and wait, let's say there's an enemy advance coming up here, and you slowly see them working their way up, you could hold fire with your artillery piece, and then once you unclick hold fire, it will fire right after you unselect return fire. And so whatever units are coming through there, it'll be perfect for disrupting them and destroying them. So that's a cool little tip when you're using this artillery piece here. Another way too for countering enemy artillery is I like to make sure that if I'm using an artillery piece for a county arty, that it has to have a decent range, a good amount of range. It's going to be a long range unit, so anywhere between 5,000 or more. But if you're unable, then at least 4,000. So I believe the Iron Thunder is about 5,000 meters for its the longest that it could shoot, and then the GMLRS has an effective range of about 6,000. So we can test this out. If you go up here, further, yeah. So it's about 6,000 meters. And then for the Iron Thunder is about 5,000, I believe. Yeah, 5,000 is its maximum range. So you want to make sure that you're using a unit that has around 5,000 or more range when you're doing a counter arty, and that will really help you be the most effective against hitting those long range units. And for this one too, if you're able to get a recon unit in the back there and you're able to laser designate, so for example, let's say we have our airborne here. Assume this is the background. Let's say we're in the back of the enemy lines, and imagine a enemy artillery piece right here that's firing, and unbeknownst to them, we have a airborne sniper there. We could actually go ahead and select our Iron Thunder, press T, and since all these missiles are laser, they have the ability to be laser designated, and then you don't need to have a laser on this artillery piece in order for it to fire. It will fire even without laser designation, but since we have an enemy artillery here that we're imagining, and we have some airborne snipers here, we could actually go ahead and select on that spot. And if we are in the forest, let's say, and behind enemy lines, and we are able to get a laser designation on enemy artillery, we could use this paladin to be really precise in its barrage here. And so when it shoots, it's actually gonna, wherever this laser is designating at, it will follow that and hit on that exact spot. So see here, and if we move it, let's say over there, it's gonna go with it. So you can see that it's gonna kind of curve. And that's a really good way, a really effective and efficient way of using airborne snipers and laser guided artillery. And that will really help you be more effective and precise when engaging enemy units at the back line. So even if they begin to move, they notice that they're getting shot at, the laser will follow that enemy unit, and you will end up being able to still be pretty precise when hitting it at a long range. So that's a way that you're going to use counter artillery. And then, so we hit the main points of going against vehicles with the cluster, going against infantry, and counter-arting. So that's going to be the main ways that you're going to want to use artillery, just how you're going to use them. Again, when it comes to, for the light or the short-range artillery pieces, mainly going to be used against infantry and just supporting our units, especially with the smoke there. And when it comes to our anti-armor units, like our Paladin or our GMLRS, we're going to make sure that we're utilizing the cluster rounds. Well, that's the only rounds that we have for this one. Our cluster rounds for going against enemy vehicles. I mean, we do have smoke and smart munitions, but the main ones that we are carrying are about 24 rounds of cluster, and these are going to be used for just mainly hitting enemy vehicles. They won't do that much damage against infantry, but they can get a little bit of damage off there. You're going to want to make sure that you're mainly utilizing the paladins that are equipped with clusters, or like the Magnolia, equipping them with clusters to defeat and sort of deter enemy vehicles from pushing on you. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the match reviews, and if you guys are enjoying this content, then make sure to subscribe. It really does help this channel grow, and it really helps, especially when I'm trying to make these videos. It lets me know that I'm actually doing a decent thing here and that you guys are actually enjoying them and finding them helpful. So here in this instance, on the left here, you see that I use the MCV to provide cover for a retreat that I'm wanting to do. So I pop smoke over there, and then I was able to get my units in the MTV, and since they have that smoke cover, I was able to get them back in the supply line. And in this instance here, I was able to use smoke to push in advance with my tank over there and start to get a cap and contest for Zone B. And then another instance here, we have our tank over here. It's sort of by itself, but I noticed that it's getting to a lower health, and I'm getting in a risky situation. So I'm going to want to retreat my unit back. So I start using some smoke because I'm not entirely sure if there's enemies on the left and the right of him. So just in case, just being a little prudent there, that I'm going to start getting some smoke on that spot, because I know that there might be units on the left and there might be units on the right, but I'm not sure. So just in case, we're going to pop that smoke to make sure that our retreat is low risk. And as we've seen on the left there, and again, I'm not controlling this is just a match review, we do see that they have some anti-tank units there. So it's going to help us avoid that by being much safer in our smoke here. And then the unit actually on the left there, this is a good opportunity to showcase this, is that the other tank there in the last bit of the match was getting attacked by those tow missiles because they were under cover of the smoke like we were. So in this match review, we noticed that we were also doing a good job of moving our artillery, but we used the Magnolia to fire where our last position was with that tank, because we know that they're probably going to move up on our position. So we're just going to do some firing on our position of our tank. For this one, we're anticipating where the Russian tank might move back. So we know that it's retreating and then it has a slow movement speed back. So we're going to get a line of fire going in the direction of what the tank's going. So that way we're going to be able to get some effective hits. And also we're doing the line there just in case it stops moving. So that way we could continue to at least hit where he might be stopping at. And there we were able to get some damage with the cluster bombs. And then another instance here of using smoke. So here we're getting ready to push with our Moskaya. So we're going to get some smoke, a nice line of smoke to cover our advance into Zone H. And this will allow us to stay in cover while we use our infantry to get a push on this objective here. So you can see that we're getting our guys pushing up when we're aware of the smoke. And also going to move our Barbarous as well. And this allows us to get in there quickly. Here we have another instance. Believe we're going to be using the Magnolia for this one, but utilizing smoke there at least for that unit to get a retreat going. So we notice that they have a big blob of units there of tanks and some infantry. So we're going to use our cluster bombs to hit that position, and we're able to do some damage there because they're static, so they're not moving. Able to get us some good nice hits. Another instance here of using the MCV, I believe it is, to provide smoke cover for our units. We have a nice line of smoke there to get a good push going with our engineer units and our AMPV. This one here was more of a sacrifice push, trying to get our units there to get some information on the whereabouts, so that way we're able to get some more artillery on the exact location of the enemy units. And here, one of the cool things about smoke too is that the enemy isn't entirely sure where your units are, so if they try to attack, like in this instance, they're not going to be very accurate or precise most of the time, so they end up hitting nothing, which is what happened here. It's just making them waste munitions and resources. So here we're able to identify the enemy artillery, and then once we start pushing in, we are certain that this unit's going to die here. So again, so it's more of a sacrifice play, but this is going to allow us to get key information to determine on what to do next. So we pop some more smoke there with this unit, and then once we get into this position, we were able to identify a large number of units. So that's another thing too, is just being strategic about the sort of information and map control. So using the smoke there, we're able to get a further push into the enemy territory, gather some key information, and then adjust based upon the information. This is going to be really beneficial for us here. And then I wasn't able to get any long-range artillery use for this video, mainly because I kept DCing for the past week. So most of my videos are either corrupted or just not able to really get a match going at all. But here, we were able to get a push, destroy some of those units. We did sacrifice some, but we understand where they're at now, so we can go and get in a push, which is what we were able to do here. Use the smoke to be able to take the point. really useful because it allows us to get in and out. I like to weave in with my units, especially the vehicles there. It's really nice. A good strategy to just weave in and out of with your units, especially if you have others to reinforce. Just weave in with the healthy units, and then once they get to a lower health, just weave them out, and then weave in the units that are at a higher HP than the ones that you're taking out there. So that way you're just consistently keeping the pace on them, not giving them any time to breathe. And that's pretty much it for the video. Again, sorry for not being able to get any footage of the long-range artillery. I haven't been able to really capture any footage, mainly due to DCing or just not being able to connect to the game, or just crashes. It just it sucks, but hopefully they get a patch up and fix all that. But that's going to be the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully you gained some knowledge from it, and this was useful to you guys. Let me know in the comments, especially if I could what I could do to improve these videos or further video suggestions. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one.